Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Today, my guest is Rabbi Bresinger of Chabad Lifeline, Recovery and Prevention. How are you, Rabbi?
Thank God, better than I deserve. I am feeling good today. Thank you.
Excellent. Really a pleasure having you on the show. You're a fellow Canadian. You're out in Montreal. I'm in Edmonton. And yeah, invited by a sort of mutual friend, Kim. Shout out to Kim. And Kim Bellas, so does the Sober is the New Cool clothing line. Big presence, as you'd mentioned before we got started here today. So shout out to her. But yeah, I'm happy to have you on the show. And yeah, I'd love to hear about what you're doing with the with Chabad Recovery and Prevention. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story. But let's get right into it. Tell me more about your recovery program you have going on.
Okay, so first, I appreciate the opportunity. Anytime that we can speak about recovery, and anytime we can frame addiction in the proper way, in a respectful way, in a way that honors, I believe, champions of pain. And I really think that's what it all comes down to, is how are we able to get through whatever that pain and suffering that has come our way. I'll tell you a little bit about me first. Maybe I'll give a little bit of a background. Okay, so I grew up in Montreal, regular, secular, traditional Jewish family with going to the regular public schools, and I didn't have the beard and didn't have the whole look at all. And when I was 12 years old, my late brother, he was 17 or 18 at the time, and he was all over the map. It turned out we didn't know, but he was full-blown bipolar, heavily involved in all kinds of substances and behaviors. And so my parents were lost, helpless, didn't know what to make of it. And me and my sister, my little sister, she's not so little anymore. She's a grandmother many times over now. But we together were watching the chaos unfold, and it wasn't just the chaos. It was more like I said, the helplessness, the lostness happens. You look at parents, and parents are the ones who are going to be the guides for good, for bad. But when the guides are don't have a compass. And it's like new terrain, it's foreign terrain, and seeing how. So that for me was a very impacting period of my life. My brother actually ended up in Edmonton.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He stole the car. He stole many different times, stole cars. One episode, he stole the car, ended up in Edmonton. I'm pretty sure, in Edmonton, Alberta, or right outside of Edmonton somewhere. Got arrested and brought to prison. So I don't know what prison. It must have been holdings. I mean, I don't know the circumstances. I just know that one day we get a phone call. My parents got a phone call, not knowing where my brother was for the last week, 2 weeks, something. A call from the authorities in Edmonton that your son is in our custody, and he's defiant, and he's being held. And I remember hearing a little bit about that. There was always relief that they found him somewhere. And then he, it's amazing how the system actually worked well. We're talking 1977, right? 1977. Yeah. The system worked well enough where he got released and sent back to Montreal to a psychiatric ward. So I'm just talking about it now and thinking about it, how that's how it should be, right? I mean, in a certain sense, it's on many different levels. He got sent to the psychiatric ward. Now, psychiatric wards in the 1970s were not far from one cuckoo's nest, right? I mean, that was probably the same period. It wasn't
a good point.
So he came there, and then we went to visit him, which was also a very impacting moment in my childhood, my life. Heavily sedated. That's what they did with psychiatric wards then. They just heavily sedated the patients. And he's walking around drooling on himself and like a zombie. And this is my big brother, my big crazy brother, who's like, and so he went into his own treatment, and he ended up actually marrying, had children. Life became pretty stable. And then just fast forward a very few, maybe 5 years or more, he ended up getting cancer, fought it off for 5 crazy years of fighting non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, finally got a bill of clean, a health, clean bill of health. And then maybe 3 years later, it came back with a vengeance as acute leukemia. And he was told he's got 3 months to live. And that's what happened. And he died. So my brother, Lauren, I don't know if I've spoken about this in that type of detail lately.
Yeah.
Certainly part of who I am. So that definitely, so here we are, me and my sister and my family and growing up. By the way, an interesting thing is I was I don't know in Edmonton, but in Montreal, the public schools, the high school started grade 7 and they end at grade 11. So I was in grade 7 and my brother then was in grade 11.
Okay.
And I always wondered, and only in the last 20 years I had the opportunity, I wanted to know why teachers, I mean, the school wasn't that big, but why did not one teacher come up and say, hey, your brother's Lauren? There must be some crazy stuff going on at home. How you doing?
Right. Okay. Yep.
I always wondered about that, I had a chance to ask. I asked close to 80, I think, teachers.
Wow.
And I asked them because I like nurses and teachers, and I mean, how much higher do you go up on the totem pole as far as servants of God in this world, right? So I go to a teacher and I'm asking them, and they told me an amazing thing almost across the board. They said, we didn't want to go there because we wouldn't know what to do once we bring the subject, we brought the subject up and we're so overwhelmed with everything else. But that's not the answer, because these are caring people in general, right? I mean, of course, so based on that, we developed a whole program on how to be first responders. That a teacher, not only a teacher, think about any first responder, wherever anybody, of course, the teachers are the most active first responders in kids' lives. So how do you empower them? It really is empowerment, because to be able to go there and not get sucked into it, to be able to go there in confidence and to be able to, so that was a very key, that was lacking. I think that was lacking. It was lacking. So I can see why, and that's important. So that's kind of shaped my life, and my life's mission is really about finding these kids, finding these 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old kids whose homes there is insanity because of addiction, because of mental illness, because of crazy dysfunction, whatever's going on, and being able to be an advocate. So just fast forward a little bit now. I'm in my teens in that high school, going through high school with all of the wonderful things of being a regular secular Jew in a public school, with anti-Semitism and the violence that went on there was part of my makeup. And I found my own substances and behaviors that helped me survive until they didn't anymore, right?
Yeah.
And so I myself, probably in about 19, I know exactly when, in 1987, 86, actually, the end of 86, 87, made some pretty solid choices, and I pretty much stuck with them since. And that's where I'm here to talk to you.
Wonderful. Yeah, thanks for sharing all that. I mean, it's always, I think it's important. It's such an important thing in, the recovery field to share a personal story, and just, given the origin story of the work that you're doing now. I really admire the fact that you went you essentially did your own, it's not market research, but research in a way that you went to all these different teachers and say, hey, why was there this gap between what was happening to me and what was happening in my family life and everything? And together, it's almost a unanimous answer from like 80 people. That's a pretty big sample size to get essentially the same answer or a variation of it. And then for you to be able to go, okay, that's your light bulb moment, and take it and run with it. One thing that you said that really stuck out to me that I'd love if you could elaborate on is, when you're in a position where you're there to help out some of these, the 11 to 13-year-old kids, when you're saying about not getting sucked in, how does that show up? Because I imagine to be very easy for you, especially, being that close to your heart about you, the way that you were brought up, for you to be sucked in. How does somebody like you get involved in a empathetic way, but without getting sucked in, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, no, I think, we all have to work on that. No matter what our roles are in the world, we're inevitably all going to be put in a position where we're able to give or we're able to take. I mean, that's the challenge is, how can I really give versus take? And think about parenting. I mean, one of the hardest things about parenting has always been, I think, for me, and I'm sure it's and I have grandkids now, but it is giving to the kids versus taking from them. So think about that, and actually you can actually see it in the recovery model a little bit as far as codependency and not. So if father's coming home and he just wants a kid to come, and because he's had a rough day and he just wants to cuddle, let's say, right? So he wants to come home and hey, and he wants you to come running and saying, hey, daddy's home, hi daddy, yeah, like that. Let's capture that moment. In and of itself, it's a very beautiful moment. I mean, but just to dissect it for a minute, here is the father coming and taking from the kid for his emotional well-being.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Right? And that's all kinds of extremes. Of course, there's extremes, and but I think that's in every relationship going forward. So whether it's as I'm a pastoral counselor, trained as a pastoral counselor, or whether it's my wife who's a therapist, or our staff, we have a staff of about 15 therapists, each and on their own. It's all about, when I'm sitting in a session now, I'm here to give. This is not the place I'm getting. So therefore, as far as getting sucked in, or if I'm clear on that, and that's I would say it's an hourly, almost hourly need to do a check-in with myself. See, right now, am I in a giving or taking? Oh, I'm pulling towards taking. That makes sense. This actually, and that's a lot of the clinical supervision that goes on as far as making sure to have healthy boundaries. It's work in progress, no question.
Yeah.
But, yeah. But just to give you a little bit of just insight about Chabad Lifeline, because I might have painted it with a very narrow part of it. We have a youth section, so we have youth counselors, and the youth counselors are dedicated to this population I just said, the 11, the 13, the 15-year-olds, the 5-year-old, either kids who are themselves needing some support because of their family or because they themselves, or for whatever it is. And I hate the expression youth at risk.
Okay. Yeah.
Because let's say there's no tomorrow. So there's no risk. There's no tomorrow. This kid is suffering right now.
Right.
So
okay.
It's not about what's he gonna come to do to other. Right now, there's some suffering going on.
Yeah.
Let's look at that. So
Right.
So the youth are we're trying to serve our kids who they themselves right in the moment need support more maybe than others. And one of the ways we have clients in our youth department is from our adult clients, right? So we have the youth department, we have adults coming in with the substance addictions and alcohol. We have also a process addiction, basically sex addiction. We have certified sex addiction therapists. We also work with gambling, not with eating. Eating's a different, for us, would need more of a medical that we don't have access to. Codependency is a big one.
Yeah.
That my wife works with. So, and then there's the partners of addicts, family members of addicts.
Yeah.
That's basically all of the above. So my passion, and our staff knows it, is the kids. But we're all kids. But so everyone is.
I'm interested to specifically about the kids, because I mean, I remember putting myself back when I was 13. My parents got divorced, and I had a real tough time articulating how I was feeling, right? So how do you find what that kid's needs is when they perhaps don't have that articulation or that coordination to really explain? Like, I imagine there's a series of, inferring questions that you can have, but how do you actually find out what that kid needs, where there's like this, a little bit of smoke and mirrors? Granted, that can show up in adults as well, but specifically to the kids, how do you find out what they need?
Wow, what a great question. I would love to have you interview our addiction counselors, our youth counselors.
Yeah.
They would tell you better. They would tell you better than I would. I think the underlying or the import is the safety, having a safe space, having a safe person, having a safe time. This is almost like, I just cut myself and I took a Band-Aid off. Now it's just breathing, right? So It's like that breathing part is sometimes all it needs. I don't need too much with that.
Yeah.
So having the kids to be able to come in and just breathe,
I like that.
is I think that's why we spend a lot of effort, finances in it, to making this. We're in a 100-year-old beautiful 3-story. It was a home.
Okay.
And we the hospital in Montreal, the Jewish General Hospital, which is just a few yards away from us, it's their home that the original founder of the Jewish General Hospital built for himself and his family.
Very cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to tell you something about what I'm very. I think it's an important point to bring out. When we had our grand opening, this house was laid dormant for 30 years. There was nobody in here. There's nothing going on.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, only because of the importance of the 12th step, I ended up connecting with somebody who I wouldn't have thought of otherwise. Next thing you know, boom, we're given this opportunity. Complete 12-step miracle.
Yeah.
That's complete. It's like never, and it was, they say that one door closes, another one opens.
Yeah.
It's the hallway in between that can kill, right?
There was no that's good. Yeah.
There was no hallway. It was boom. And it was
boom.
So finally, after all the preparation, we have this grand opening. And the director of the hospital then was a surgeon. And when he was introduced to speak to the crowd, a surgeon said this. We made a point to introduce him with his credentials.
Mm-hmm.
He stood up and he said, over in that building is our cancer outpatient clinic. Over there is child psychiatry. The one over there is outpatient psychiatry. Having addiction here now, he says, this is a corridor of healing.
Ooh, I love that.
For a surgeon to put addiction with cancer.
Yeah. Ooh, right?
Wow.
Yeah, that's profound.
So
very cool. I'm glad you gave that detail. Wow. That's there's just something just meant to be magical, happenstance, whatever you believe in, you know what I mean? As far as just, time and place. And you guys have that going on there for sure. Very, very cool. Very, very cool. I want to get back to, you mentioned it a few times, the whole codependency thing, right? I don't necessarily have a question equipped for that topic, but just the topic of it, codependency, even for me growing up, it was something that like my parents were learning about, my parents' generation essentially. And now it's something that does get talked about a fair bit, and the sort of the dangers of that, and then even people pleasing, and that sort of thing. What are your stances on a codependent, like the dangers, or I guess take caution with, a codependent relationship? And I guess second question, I do have a second question. I'll come back to that, but just, yeah, how are you finding that the codependency shows up nowadays? Is it less? Is it more? And just what is your sort of take overall on just a codependent relationship?
So I once heard someone say that that reality is the annoying time between naps. Okay. So in a way, sobriety is a dedication to being in reality at all costs.
Wow, I love that.
And that's why it's a moment at a moment time. I don't care if someone came in and they're 60 years or they're 10 years or they're 2 days. It's really almost a moment by moment recommitment to reality.
Wow.
And how my understanding of reality is that there is a creator, there is creation, and now there's a relationship. Being part of the creator's creation, that's the relationship. That's the reality. Now, how am I going to engage or disengage, or that really all depends on so many things going on. I would say 90% of them that I did not make, that I did not do. You gotta, I don't know, I guess we don't speak fellowships here because of traditions, but if there was anybody who wanted to speak about ACOA, I would suggest this is the mothership. There's a fellow that spoke in an ACA meeting that I go to. He said, this is great. He said, I'm a lumberjack. And he showed his hands. It's on Zoom. See the size of this? I'm a lumberjack. This guy's like, I know he's 78 years old. He's got like 60 plus years in AA. And in the last 5 years or 10 years, 5 years, he's been in ACOA. So the way you know that is when these guys who've been around forever, hard-nosed, hard-assed, they cry. It's so beautiful to watch.
Right.
So this guy says, I'm a lumberjack. This bastard from across my place, I owed him money. And he came to my front yard and he dumped a whole bunch of crap in my front yard. He said, the old me, I would have taken my chainsaw to his log cabin.
Yeah.
He said, but you know what? He said, I sat there and I looked at it and I said, I sure as hell not responsible for this stuff being here, but now I have to clean it up.
Oof. Yeah. Yeah.
Matt, for me, if I can really embrace that, the amount of self-compassion that will automatically be instilled in me, I am not responsible for it, whatever it is. Okay, fine. Now what? I got to clean it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the goal is cleaning it up. But for me, the conventional way and all these things, it was never so easy to separate, bashing myself because of this. No, 1 second. This is put there.
Yeah.
Do you know, I just had a seminar about epigenetics.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. We
think that a baby's born and it's fresh baby. No such thing. No such thing. Just from this idea of genetics, forget about mystical or spiritual or just talking about that, right? Just talk about how a generation ago, you had a mother who had some serious trauma, right?
Yep.
That's when she's pregnant, let's say. That's imprinted. Now the baby comes in the world fresh. No,
Right.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Right.
But now, forget about that. Talk about generational trauma being passed down. Then we look around, and sometimes it's amazing we get out of bed in the morning.
Right. Right.
So to celebrate that, to know, like, it's all for me about what's going to motivate, what's going to empower, what's going to allow me to breathe, to be in reality. First and foremost for me is like to say, wow, I love naps. And it makes good sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's oh man, great answers. I think it's like in the spirit of we're talking about the younger, like the 11 to 13s, and I again, just to tie into your story, and I'm relating to that as I've revealed a little bit about myself. There's I doing a lot of thinking about this recently, about different things and you talked about this early in our conversation about like coping is essentially like a survival at a certain point, especially the younger you are, where that's like your well-being is your parents. Like if you're not at the stage where you can just go and live by yourself, you know what I mean? So there is a survival attached to that. And I think that's the same thing as like codependency, like, of course. And if that's patterned to you by the way that your parents have interacted, and I love how you're getting into so many different avenues we can go with this. I'm just sort of riffing on it here now, but yeah, the whole generational trauma thing, right? Which has been essentially proven. They've done the like lab rats exercise where they have the babies. So they have this electric shock with the rats that are in there when a certain perfume comes into the cage. And when those babies of those rats are born, they have the same reaction to the smell that gets pumped in there. They have like a stress reaction to that. So just the fact that trauma can be imprinted. That's rats, obviously versus humans, but I think it's safe to say that even, whether it's, you can say it's woo woo or not, I think there's some scientific backing behind that. So man, really interesting stuff. But I guess just to get onto the subject of, what is considered traumatic at the time, because it's like a coping mechanism. And then if it isn't treated the way that you guys are working with these kids, how that can just echo into the relationships that you have well into your adulthood, right? And it just keeps running these circles and cycles and all that. I'm curious, have you guys had, what kind of success stories do you have when you can look at somebody that's like, you talk to this person when they were 11 years old and perhaps they're a young adult now, 20 or something, have a family, and they can, really look back on the work that you guys have done as far as like, man, you really did change their life. And as a result, their family's life, because now they have kids involved. Is there any stories like that you can share as well?
Yeah, I mean, we'd better if I would just connect you with these people, let them tell the
Right.
story.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that would be, and that's, thank God, that's really easy to do because,
that's amazing.
Yeah, but going back to what we were saying about codependency and the relationship and reality and that commitment to being in reality. Look, it's the toughest thing in the world. I mean, I'm married 33 years, right? And there's no question there's been nothing harder in my life than working on my marriage. And it's because of how absolutely essential it is in my life. It's, that's where the work is. So the relationship. And now, if you're coming into a relationship, you're bringing your own stuff and she's bringing her own stuff. And no matter what's going on, there's going to be neediness that's not healthy. There's going to be needs that are going to be looked to get from the other. That's the idea of giving and taking. We're going to be taking. And in a way, that's codependency in a nutshell. If you want to break it all down, it's what am I taking from you? What do I need to get from you versus what it is I need to be getting from higher power, from within myself. And that's why it's a life's work. But how that plays out, I mean, there's great fellowships CODA, Codependence Anonymous, is a great fellowship. ACOA is, I think, probably best when it comes to dealing with these things. You know, the fourth step in ACOA, there's a different version of the steps.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you know that?
No, I
People
haven't. I
don't know
haven't
that. It's not it's not official. Not
okay.
official.
Interesting.
But it's unofficial. But I'm going to tell you now.
Yeah, please.
You want to hear these steps?
Yes.
Hear these steps.
Yeah, yeah.
You have a minute? You have a minute?
Absolutely.
We're going to do this.
Yeah,
okay,
let's do
good.
this. Yeah.
Okay. Listen to this. Okay. These are Tony A's 12 steps.
Okay.
Okay. We admitted we're powerless over the effects of living with alcoholism or dysfunction, and that our lives had become unmanageable. We came to believe in a power greater than ourselves could bring us clarity. Because the assumption is that we're not insane. As little kids, we weren't insane.
Right.
So clarity. We made a decision to practice self-love and to trust in a higher power of our understanding. Step 4, you ready for this one?
Yeah, I am.
You need to have a drum machine, like a drum roll machine.
The drum roll.
Yeah. We made a searching and blameless inventory of our parents because, in essence, we had become them.
Ooh. Yeah.
Blameless inventory.
That's
searching and blameless inventory.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can continue, but for me, it was like, and then we admitted to our higher power, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our childhood abandonment.
Oof. Wow.
So it's for me, the way I'm hearing it and the way it works for me after many years of is it's not about defects. It's about wounds.
Okay.
It's about self-compassion. I mean, the big book talks about how the root of everything is the fear, but self-centeredness, and these are the things they talk about. But I think going into the wounds at that point and looking at myself as a wounded person has helped me in my healing tremendously.
Yeah. What would you say is like the key wounds that people have? Because like when you say that, like some of the magic words there, abandonment, rejection, I think, or like, and it's if people are acting out of that, which I think the majority of people do in some variation, don't they? I mean, I know myself, the work that I've done on myself, it's definitely a fear of rejection, right? And I think that there's, whether that ties back to, the old, caveman days where if you're getting rejected, it's literally life and death. I don't know if that's, kind of transposes itself into modern living. But yeah, just a little bit about that, because like to me, as soon as you said abandonment, I'm like, oof, that's like, those got to be the two of the most key wounds that you can find, aren't they?
I remember sitting in a meeting maybe for a year, hearing about isolation, and it wasn't resonating with me.
Interesting.
And then I realized that's all I live in is isolation. I'm going back to the beginning, like when I was first introduced to the concept. It's like, wow, it was so. I don't know where it just came from just now. It just came up in my head, but when you talk about abandonment, isolation, I guess it's the same. The thing about abandonment or neglect is I don't remember it because there was no it to remember.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's a tougher thing to find, but the abandonment is the fear that pushes the people pleasing, pushes the traits, the survival traits. And they're all in order to regulate the inner drugstore. The inner drugstore is what do you want to pull out? Alcohol, you want to pull out drugs, you want to pull out porn, you want to pull out codependency. This is just the inner drugstore. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So it's the abandonment. It's the abandonment, fear, being alone, fear, being helpless, not knowing it's going to be okay.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think you summed it up right there. Not knowing that it's going to be okay. Because at the end of the day, I think that's where everybody wants to know it's going to be okay, right?
It'd be okay. You know, yesterday, details do not matter, but I was so overwhelmed with something, could not see my way out.
Yeah.
And the last thing I want to do when that's the case is go to my wife. Because I'm the energy I'm putting out there is like just whoa, and she's, thank God, has enough work with her. No. Like so
yeah.
And then today, this guy came down and sat down here. He said, this next thing you know was taken care of.
Boom. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, what was going on there with being overwhelmed? And last night I did some prayer, and I do guided imagery. That's meditation now, but guided. I love having guided imagery meditation.
Yeah.
So one of them is a check-in, to go inside and to check in what's going on, who's going on,
right.
Which voice is happening right now, which part of you, right?
Exactly.
And what came to me was, and it was like there's some part of me somewhere saying, it's too much. It's too much. It's too much. Now, so, you know, the beauty of, I think, where I'm at in my own personal recovery now is, I don't need to know when that happened or what happened.
Yeah.
I don't need that. What I just, when I'm hearing it and I'm being curious about it, it's such a relief. Like,
right.
It's not, you know, I wrote a letter to my God and fired him. And
interesting. Okay.
The letter that I wrote was really to my critical parent.
Ooh, got it. Okay. Yeah.
So internal family systems, critical parent, we have these voices inside, however you want to call it. And for so long, until now, I mean, for sure, it's a struggle. That critical voice I have in me, I give so much power to it, so much credence to it. It's not an opinion, it's fact.
It's fact. Yeah, exactly.
I know what you're thinking of me. I know what you're thinking of me. I know what he's thinking of me. And it all depends on how I performed it, but I know. Who knows? Who is it?
Yeah.
That critical parent I have inside my head.
Yeah.
It took me a while to realize, oh my gosh, when I say I know what he's thinking of me or whatever, I'm not saying like I have an idea. I know, like that mind reading, that whole crap. I know. Who's that knowing? Who is it?
Yeah.
I had to sit back and realize, oh my gosh, that's a critical parent. And I've been worshiping and giving, he is the voice of truth.
Right.
Wow. It's not true. It's not true.
Yeah.
Even I'm saying it, I'm just working on it. But
yeah, I get you.
Just to notice it, to see it there for what it is.
Yeah.
Versus being in it.
Yeah.
Same thing with this anxious feeling about it's too much. It's like just to stop and say, "Ooh, yeah, there's something going on there. What is that?" Yeah. One of the best lines I heard was a parent says to their kid, you know, "What's wrong with you?" You hear that expression? What's wrong with you?
Of course.
It's not really a question, right?
Right.
What's wrong with you? Instead, the next time a parent sees their kid and wants to say, what's wrong with you? Say, what's happened to you?
Ooh. Yeah.
What's happened to you? With a curiosity.
Yeah.
With a genuine curiosity. If I can do that for myself, wow, I can breathe.
Yeah.
I can stay awake a few more minutes. I can extend my nap time.
You push it back a bit, eh? Yeah, exactly. I love it. Yeah, Rabbi, you got a couple of again, key words for myself. Curiosity, one of my absolute favorite words, and just in my own, recovery journey and what I help other people with. And breathe. Just, you said breathe a few times. It's so important, isn't it? To just, because it's like, it's easy throughout the course of the day. I freeze a lot. I just hold my breath. And I also have that like stress response, that mild stress response of chest breathing. And you've said it like 3 or 4 times now, just breathe. And that's like some of the best advice, is that one word, breathe. Have that nice big abdomen breath, let it come in, let it come out. And man, it'll just, even one of those big breaths make a huge difference in my day, you know. And if I do that once an hour, just check in with myself and get curious about what some of these things are. So I love it too, what you mentioned as far as like finding some like separation. I love the idea that you wrote that your God, your former God, if you will, this critical parent, a termination slip essentially is just a wonderful idea. And you know, it's great stuff. Great stuff. I wanted to come back. Oh, there was actually something right off of that as I'm summarizing. I'm forgetting where I wanted to go with this. My apologies. Great stuff. I did write down a couple things. We're going to go with this. I'm going to come back to it. I know it's going to something will trigger me. So just the word clarity. What does that mean to you? Because it's sort of one of these buzzwords that come up in sobriety and recovery. I know obviously there's the dictionary definition of it. What is your personal definition of clarity? What does clarity mean to you in your life? And then what you would show other people on how to, you know, find it in their own lives.
I think the question is, who's talking? Who's talking? Who's talking? And the more I'm doing that, the clearer I am with how simple things might be.
Okay.
Right. So who's talking? Being clear means for me, and it's a good question. I haven't really thought about it, so I'm just speaking as I'm talking, which is how I usually talk anyway. So, but listen, I once heard an old drunk told me a beautiful prayer is, God, help me see myself through your eyes, right? Help me see others through your eyes. It's like, if I can have those eyes or the clarity to see things as they are, then there, you know, nobody, even though my critical voice wants to tell me he does, nobody knows 100% for what's going on inside of me or you, but my idea of my higher power does. If I would have access, even a glimpse, then things would be very clear. The clarity passes. The word Chabad that you did pretty good on. I'll give you like a 7. I'll give you a 7. You'll try it now. Try it now.
Chabad.
That was like an 8.
Yes, here we go. Get progress.
So the word Chabad, you can check it out on, you can look it up. It's Chabad. Chabad. It's in the Hebrew language. It stands for 3 words: Chokhmah, Bina, and Das. Basically means, first there's clarity.
Okay.
So if you're walking into a dark forest, right?
Yeah.
It's pitch black. You can't see anything. You just know you're in a forest. All of a sudden there's lightning. And you get a flash of clarity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Those moments, that flash, what do you do with it? So the next step in Chabad, what we're talking about, the next step would be to look at the trees, to check out the trees, to make your way through there. Yeah. And then the next step is actually to go through there.
Got it.
Another way of looking at it is you go into a library, there's great amount of wisdom, all kinds of books, but that's just that. But then I take them off the shelf, I start reading it. But then ultimately the idea is to internalize it.
Right.
So you're going from clarity to knowledge or how to work with it, and then actually doing it.
And actually integrating it and doing it.
Integrating it. Yeah, so that's what Chabad is. So the beginning starts with clarity.
Yeah.
The beginning starts with, that's where it's all about. But in this way, where I hear it now in the steps is, I have always said, and I always will, addiction is a disease. There's no question. It's insane. There's no question. It's a loss of sanity in decisions that I'm making on a regular basis. If I know, there's no question. Right. At the same time, there's something different about saying that I need clarity for sanity.
Mm,
Think about that. It's like the
yeah,
second step here is I'm looking for the clarity.
yeah.
That's
Would
maybe just
would sanity come from clarity? Do you think sanity would be like a, a symptom or a byproduct of clarity, perhaps?
think so. Yeah.
Right? Perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting topic for sure. I remembered what I was going to say, and it's funny because it came up on a conversation I had yesterday when we're talking about when you get into this, like the visualization and just allowing something to be there, and without the need to like explain it or know the origin story of it, which I am just kind of getting to that stage now, realizing that me needing or wanting to explain a feeling that's coming up is actually getting in the way of the feeling releasing and leaving. It's like I'm like a prison guard that's like, hold on a second, I got to analyze this feeling and like try to explain it to myself. And meanwhile, it's just sitting there ready to go. And then by the time I've explained it, it's either like gone back inside me, or it's like the moment is essentially passed, right? So I thought it was very fascinating that you brought that up, because it's sort of I think, I don't know, I'm just complete speculation, perhaps from a past time when there wasn't so much distractions and mental chatter. Perhaps that was an easier skill that humans had and possessed. I think we all have it inside us, because it's just some simplicity to it, right? Again, getting to the clarity. But I think I know I get in my own way with this a lot. And we talked about this, it's just like, man, I can feel it coming up, bubbling up. It usually gets trapped in my throat, the energy. And then it's like, it won't get past. It won't have the release, because my brain is like, hold on a second, because this is when I was 5 years old. Stephen Allen took that Lego set for me, and then it just like the feeling's like, oh, I guess we're not leaving today. So I just thought that was a fascinating, outlook that you gave, and just I wanted to I guess give my perspective on it too. And if you want to continue on how important that is, just to be able to like sit with the feeling without judgment, without anything else, any of this other things that we seem to need to do as humans.
So yeah, no, I love hearing that. I would bring in the stuff that I've been talking about. A loving parent, trying to visualize a loving parent. And we not, my parents, my mother is still alive. She be well, lived a long life. My father passed away, but they did the best, they did the best they can, right? I always say we did the best they can. Who raised them and who raised them and what's all the stuff. But do I have an image of a loving parent? Who is that? So for me, I've thought a lot about that. Who's a loving parent for me would be someone who's strong. Someone who's self-assured. There's a certain, almost like the opposite of a codependent. There's a certain opposite of a people pleaser. Clear, look at that, clear, strong, loving, that kind of. So now, if I can think about that a little bit, and how can I then, in moments like that, say, what would a loving parent say right now?
Yeah. I got you.
Or what would a loving parent do right now? I carpool in the morning. You want to hear about my carpooling?
Pardon me? What was
You want to hear about my carpooling?
I mean, depends on how interested we're talking with the carpooling. Sure. Yes.
Well, the fact that I don't have any kids carpool age, so I'll tell you who's in my carpool.
Yeah, sure.
Okay?
Please.
I go into my car. I have a 4-minute drive. That's the beauty of Montreal. Beautiful. I have a 4-minute drive from my house of worship in the morning to Chabad Lifeline here, right? In that 4 minutes, I carpool. Who do I take into the car? So first I I'm the loving parent now. I go into the driver's seat, put my seatbelt on, 2 hands on the wheel, no radio.
Yeah.
And I invite my critical parent to come sit in the front seat.
Yeah.
And I talk to him about what have you been telling me lately? Yeah, that's true. He should have done that. You're right. That's a good point of that. But you know what? I hear you, but it's not helping things. It's really not helping. Go sit in the back seat, put your seatbelt on.
Yeah.
Put your seatbelt on. Then I invite my rebellious teenager, which is really the addict in each of us. The teenager comes in. I sit him down. I say, what have you been wanting lately? Oh, okay, yeah, I get that. Okay. I know why too. I know why you want that. I get it. But you know what? I got it now. I got the little boy. It's okay. Go put your seatbelt on. And by the way, later we're going to be doing some fun stuff. But it's going to be okay. I'm going to be. And then I invite my little boy, and he sits down next to me. And usually he doesn't want me to say anything because he doesn't trust. He just wants to be seen. He just wants to be seen. And those few minutes in my day, it's just amazing stuff. The idea here is that each one of these parts have been trying to protect my little boy. So my teenager, for instance, for me, up until a certain period of my life, my rebellious teenager didn't kick in. When he kicked in, he was kicking in because he was trying to take care of this little boy that was abandoned, molested, messed up in the family, all kinds of crap going on there. So this teenager kicked in and false sense of power, excitement, pow, 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 pow. Thank you for being there for the little boy. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
But you know what? You can't drive. You scared every time you get in the driver's seat, you scare that little boy so bad. He doesn't want you driving stoned. He doesn't want you driving through lights at 100 miles an hour. No, that's not going to help him.
Yeah.
So the little, a teenager is going to say back to me, says, yeah, where you been? Who's been taking care of the little boy all these years?
Right.
Where you been? That's where I got to say, you know what, right now I'm trying to be the loving parent.
Yeah.
And I'm begging God, my higher power, please help me be that loving parent to all of these parts, all of me, so that I can give them a break. Because a teenager just wants to have fun. He doesn't want to parent this kid. And the critical parent too. The critical parent wants a break, but he's afraid if he slows down, stops, whatever it is, giving me that advice and all that kind of stuff, he's afraid that little boy's going to get burnt. So, but meanwhile, every time the critical parent starts going at it, the teenager starts to react. Next thing you know, the little boy is like, So carpool is a powerful time of integration, awareness.
Amazing. I'm really glad. I wasn't sure where you're going with that. You could probably tell. I'm like, do I want to? And now that that was incredibly powerful. I'm really glad you did tell me about the carpool. I couldn't tell if it was like a rhetorical question or, okay, where are you going with that? That was brilliant, man. I really enjoyed that. That's going to stick with me for sure. Some really good stuff. You got some wonderful like analogies and metaphors and similes and such, and just really good, the quotes that really stick with me. So I really appreciate you coming on today. I have one final thought that this is pretty recent too, that it got brought up actually in a meeting that I've been at. And I found it, I was like, it was one of those like where it just like, it floored me when somebody said it. It's like, people pleasing, and I think to a degree, codependency, people pleasing at a certain stage after you become aware of it, like when you're an adult, it's like nothing more than a manipulation technique at that point. Right. And I was like, whoa, I've never heard it like that. And I was like, holy shit. And since then I've had such a different, change of just perspective on it, and a lot more aware of my own, patterns when they show up, and it really shed some light on it now, realizing it, holy shit. And then, we talk about like the accepting responsibility and, okay, well, the mess is here. Perhaps I didn't create the mess, but I got to clean it up. You know what I mean? So just to kind of tie everything together. Yeah. Just what do you think about like that as a quote? Because man, it floored me when I heard that.
It comes back down to, is it a defect or a wound?
Yeah. So
if it's a defect, then manipulation, self-centeredness, it's that's what it is. What am I people pleasing for? Why? Because I want them to like me for what? Because I need something from them. I'm playing games, no question.
Right.
So it's manipulation.
Yeah.
But go a little deeper. It's survival.
Yeah.
It's survival. If that person doesn't like me, I'm screwed. So you want to, so you know, you're a liar, you're a manipulator, you're playing games. You'll get. I saw something actually, crazy thing. I never saw this before. My mother, she just turned 90 yesterday. I was visiting with her, and a neighbor popped his head in and said something like, here, I got some more wool for you. Have some wool. What are my mother's not? And she said, oh, thank you. That's so nice. That's so nice. And then the door closed, and she goes, what a jerk. I never saw that side of her, ever, never. And it hit me like, oh my gosh, she's been people pleasing that guy, manipulating that guy, just her survival stuff.
Sure.
You know, so that's what came out to me, like, boom, like here he thinks she's a wonderful, then
yeah.
And I can judge it, and I can say she's manipulating in it.
Yeah.
And then I can stop and I go, 90 years old and so wounded. That really is convinced that unless this guy likes her, he's not going to give whatever she needs. That's her way of life.
Man, that's powerful. Yeah, you know, and that comes down. Yeah,
I heard that a long time ago.
Yeah,
I come from a generation that knew the original.
Yeah.
And they said, in the end of the day, you're the only one in that box.
Yeah.
In the end of the day, you're the only one in that box.
Man.
So that's like, yeah. Why am I a people pleaser? Why am I a manipulator? Why am I a salesman? Why? Because I'm screwed.
Yeah. And you threw in a whole nother level on there for me, getting beyond, it was like that second level. So yes, there was the manipulation. So what is behind the manipulation? It's beyond the egoic. I need this person to like me to feed my ego. There's something even lower than that, which I didn't even consider until what you just said. And that's almost one of the themes of our conversation here today, is this, like, the wound, the worrying about abandonment, rejection. That's what it comes down to, man. Yeah. Wow. Powerful stuff. I want to be respectful for your time. That hour went by incredibly quickly. Really appreciate you coming on today, Rabbi. Thank you so much. It's an awesome conversation. Really enjoyed the topic. Feels like we could have easily talked another hour, and it would feel like 15 minutes at this point, but I do want to be respectful for your time. Thank you so much for coming on. Where can people reach out to you if they want to, just have a conversation with you, learn more about you? I will have all your links that you gave me in the show notes, but yeah, just we'll give you a chance to wind everything down here where people can get a hold of you.
So I think on Instagram, we're Chabad Lifeline. And our website, Chabad Lifeline. And if you're in and around Montreal, please call us up and come see me. I'll make you a peanut butter jelly sandwich, and we'll have an open speaker meeting that you'll come to.
Sounds great. If I'm coming to Montreal, I will definitely. I was going to come anyways, but you threw that peanut butter jelly sandwich in there. I'm all over that. So, Rabbi, thank you so much for coming on today, and let's keep in touch. And I'd love to have you back on sometime.
Absolutely. All the very best. God bless you. Take care.